It was a Wednesday morning, the kind that blurred into the hundreds before it. The city skyline stood crisp against a pale sky, and the glass walls of Blake Global Enterprises shimmered like polished armor. Inside, the lobby buzzed with quiet precision, polished shoes on marble, elevator chimes, the clipped greetings of people moving fast. At the center of this controlled chaos was Christian Blake. He stepped through the revolving glass doors at exactly 7:58 a.m., dressed in a powder blue custom-tailored suit that caught the morning light like silk steel. His jaw was clean-shaven, his brown hair styled to perfection, not a strand out of place. His cobalt eyes scanned the space with the habitual sharpness of a man used to controlling every variable in the room. Executives nodded, assistants braced. He was the kind of man who never looked surprised, until today. Halfway across the lobby, just as his assistant Grace approached with his schedule, Christian's stride faltered. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, but then he stopped. There, near the edge of the reception desk, where no child should be, sat a little girl. She couldn't have been older than 5. Blonde curls framed her round face, falling to her shoulders like soft question marks. Her white dress was creased and slightly faded, with a denim jacket slipping off one shoulder. She held a glittery backpack in her lap, clutching it with both hands like it held the world. Her sneakers were scuffed. Her expression wasn't sad or scared, just waiting. Christian blinked, unsure if anyone else saw her, but they did, only no one approached. Executives gave sidelong glances. The receptionist nervously shuffled papers. Security looked to Christian, waiting for a cue, but he didn't move. Not yet, because her eyes, wide, blue, piercing, looked just like his. He swallowed something tight in his throat and slowly walked toward her, the sound of his shoes echoing off the polished floor. He crouched awkwardly, unsure how to do this. "Hey," he said softly. "Are you lost?" The little girl tilted her head, studied him with eerie calm, and replied in a clear, serious voice, "Where can I buy a dad?" Time stopped. Christian's mind stumbled. Around them, the world continued, people walking, phones buzzing, the faint ding of an elevator, but he didn't hear any of it. "I'm sorry," he said, a little breathless. "What did you say?" The girl didn't blink. She shifted her backpack on her knees and answered with quiet certainty. "I saved coins. I need to buy a dad." For a man who had handled billion-dollar deals and walked through hostile boardrooms like a ghost in a storm, Christian Blake had never been so unprepared. He opened his mouth, nothing came out, but something deep inside him cracked open. Christian didn't know how long he crouched there, staring at the little girl with the 2 serious eyes and the 2 grown words. She didn't fidget, she didn't explain, she simply waited, like she'd already done the hardest part, walking through the doors and asking. He glanced around. Executives avoided eye contact. Grace, his assistant, hovered near the security desk, clutching her clipboard like it might help. No one knew what to do. Christian didn't either. But the girl, she did. She stood, dusted off the hem of her dress, and stepped closer. With no hesitation, she reached up and gently wrapped her small hand around his index finger, just like that, like it was already decided. "I don't need toys," she said. "I just want a dad. And Mommy says Daddy's help. Ours is broken. Mommy too. She's tired." Christian felt something in his chest twist, something old and buried, something he'd sealed off behind status updates and security badges. "What's your name?" he managed. "Lily," she replied. "Lily Grace." She paused, then added, "We live far, but I know the way." Christian blinked. His whole morning, his whole existence, was scheduled down to the half-minute, but in that moment, his watch felt like a weight. His phone buzzed. Grace mouthed something. He ignored them all, because here was a child, asking to be loved like it was a business transaction, and somehow, it was undoing him. He stood slowly, and she didn't let go of his finger. She held on, steady and sure, like she already trusted him more than anyone had in years. "Lily," he said carefully, "I can't be bought." She looked up at him. "Then I guess you're free," she said simply. "But if you're going to be my dad, you have to help Mommy. She's really sick." That was it. That was the moment Christian Blake's carefully constructed world, the one built on ambition, logic, and isolation, shattered like glass dropped on marble. "I'll take you home," he said quietly. She smiled for the first time, not wide, not dramatic, just a small relieved curve of her lips. Then she led him to the revolving door, still holding his finger. His driver looked startled when Christian opened the back door himself. Lily climbed in, like she'd done it 100 times. Christian followed, still unsure if this was a dream. As the car pulled away, the skyline faded behind them, and for the first time in years, Christian Blake didn't look back. He didn't ask Grace to cancel meetings. He didn't text the board. He just sat there, watching the little girl beside him as she pressed her cheek against the window, humming softly. She was calm, peaceful. Like this, finally, was the easy part. Christian wasn't ready for where they were going, but something told him he was exactly where he needed to be. The car ride was quiet. The kind of quiet that stretches between strangers when neither knows what to say, and yet there was comfort in it. Lily didn't chatter like most kids might. She stared out the window, watching the city transform from shimmering skyscrapers to older blocks and tired storefronts. Her tiny hand still curled loosely around Christian's. He couldn't stop glancing at her. She looked so sure of herself, so at home beside him, and something about that unnerved him more than any corporate ambush ever had. When he finally asked where they were going, she gave him an address, short and soft, and then went back to staring at the world rushing past. Christian didn't recognize it, but his driver did. The man raised his eyebrows in the rearview mirror, but didn't say a word. It was the kind of neighborhood Christian hadn't been in since he was a teenager, before he'd carved himself into someone untouchable. As they turned down a narrow side street, something in Christian stirred: the cracked pavement, the chain-link fences, a faded mural peeling off the side of a convenience store. It was more than familiarity. It was a feeling, a memory. A door he'd slammed shut long ago beginning to creak open. The car stopped in front of a two-story building with chipping paint and crooked steps. Christian hesitated, but Lily didn't. She hopped down and tugged his hand. "This way," she said. She climbed the stairs like she'd done it 1,000 times. He followed, the weight of the unknown growing heavier with each creaking floorboard. They stopped at a faded brown door on the second floor. Lily pulled a key from her backpack, a plastic heart keychain dangling from it, and unlocked it without hesitation. The apartment smelled faintly of old wood and lemon cleaner. It was clean but sparse. Worn furniture, thin curtains, a few scattered toys and coloring books on the floor. Everything felt used, stretched, and loved the way only survival makes things loved. Then he saw her, lying on a futon near the window, a blanket pulled over her lap. Was a woman. She turned her head toward the door, eyes fluttering open, and time collapsed. Her hair was longer, her face thinner, pale and worn with exhaustion, but her eyes, he knew those eyes. "Christian," she whispered. His knees nearly gave out. He walked forward slowly, not daring to believe it. "Sophia." She tried to sit up but failed. Her voice cracked like paper when she spoke again. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." He stood frozen. The last time he saw her, they were barely adults, full of reckless love and impossible dreams. He'd gone to London for a job. She'd stayed behind. They lost touch. He thought she'd moved on. He had, or so he told himself. He glanced at Lily, then back at Sophia. A terrifying, beautiful question formed. "She's mine, isn't she?" Sophia didn't speak. She just nodded, and the world tilted. Christian sat in the worn armchair next to the futon, his hands clasped tightly between his knees. He wasn't breathing right, couldn't. Every time he looked at Sophia, the way her cheeks had hollowed, the shadows under her eyes, he felt another part of his old self crumble. Across the room, Lily quietly unpacked a small toy from her bag, as if this were the most natural thing in the world, bringing a strange man home and introducing him to the mother he'd unknowingly left behind. Sophia's voice was soft, brittle. "I didn't want it to happen like this." Christian looked at her, eyes searching. "You knew all this time, and you didn't tell me." "I didn't know how," she whispered. "You left so fast. You changed numbers. Your company, your life, it exploded overnight. I thought you were gone." "I was never gone," he said, the words bitter in his throat. "You could have written anything." She looked down at her hands, frail and motionless in her lap. "By the time I found out I was pregnant, I'd already missed my chance. I told myself not to burden you, that you'd moved on. I thought maybe it was better that way." "Better for who?" he asked, voice sharper than intended. "For her," she answered quietly. "For you. I didn't want to pull you back into something that might ruin what you were building." He looked at Lily again. She sat cross-legged on the carpet now, gently brushing her doll's hair. "How long have you been sick?" Sophia hesitated. "About a year. Started with dizziness, then the headaches, then the tumor." Christian's gut clenched. "And you didn't ask for help?" Her eyes flicked up to meet his. Wounded, proud. "I didn't think you'd care." That pierced deeper than he expected. "You really believe that?" "You disappeared, Christian," she said. her voice rising for the first time. "You left to chase a dream, and I let you go because I loved you, but then you vanished, and I couldn't compete with the man you were becoming." He stood and paced the small apartment. The walls felt closer, the ceiling lower. He turned back to her, his voice raw. "I thought about you more than you know. I just buried it. I didn't know how to go back." "You didn't have to," she said softly. "I wasn't asking." He stepped closer and knelt by her side. Gently, he reached for her hand. It was cold, but she didn't pull away. "I'm here now," he said, "and I'm not leaving. Not again." She looked at him, tears brimming. "She doesn't know everything, just that her dad was gone. She came looking for me," he said. "That little girl walked into my world like she belonged there, because she does." They sat in silence, the weight of years stretching between them, full of what-ifs and could-have-beens. But now, there was also a beginning. Christian didn't take them back to his penthouse. That sterile glass cathedral, immaculate, expensive, cold, suddenly felt like the last place on earth he wanted them to see. It was built for deals, not people, for status, not softness. So instead, he called ahead to his private estate, just outside the city, a place he barely used, a place that had been waiting, empty, for a reason to matter. When the car pulled up to the gates and wound through the tree-lined driveway, Lily pressed her face to the window. "Is this yours?" she asked, her voice small. Christian smiled gently. "Ours now." The house stood tall, but warm, a blend of wood and stone, and soft amber lights glowing in the dusk. The air smelled of pine and something older, home maybe, though it had never been that before. Inside, everything had been prepared. Fresh linens, a fire already kindling in the hearth. Sophia's room, once a guest suite, now made ready with the softest bedding, soft pillows, and a vintage rocking chair Christian had asked his housekeeper to dust off just that morning. Somehow, he had known something was coming. He just hadn't known what. Sophia walked slowly through the foyer, holding the railing as she climbed 2 short steps toward the hallway. Her illness made each movement deliberate. Christian stayed close, not hovering, but ready. She paused just before the guest suite's door. "I don't know if I can stay," she said quietly. "You don't have to decide tonight," he replied. "But the bed's warm." And Lily already claimed the corner near the fireplace for her bunny. Sophia smiled, tired but genuine. Inside the room, Lily was already curled up on the plush rug, flipping through a picture book. She looked up when her mother entered and patted the space beside her. "This is where we live now, right?" Sophia blinked. I guess so." Christian stepped into the doorway, silhouetted by soft hallway light. "You'll stay here as long as you need. Doctors will come, food will be taken care of, no more hospital lines, no more worrying." Sophia turned toward him, eyes sharp despite the exhaustion. "Why?" "Because I should have been there," he said, "and because I can be now." She sat on the edge of the bed slowly, her shoulders tense, like a soldier unsure if the war was really over. Then as Lily climbed up beside her and leaned into her side, something in her face softened. Christian stood for a moment, watching them, unsure if he should leave. "You don't have to be strong anymore," he said gently. "Not by yourself." Sophia didn't respond, but this time, when she closed her eyes and lay back against the pillows, it wasn't with fear. It was with the faintest kind of surrender. And that night, in a home filled with the smell of wood and the crackle of new beginnings, Christian Blake sat alone in his study and didn't check his phone, not once. The next morning, Christian Blake burned the eggs. Not just a little, smoke alarm level, pan scraping, definitely not edible kind of burnt. He'd underestimated how quickly the heat climbed, how slippery butter could be, how chaotic breakfast could feel when you weren't surrounded by professional chefs or corporate schedules. Lily thought it was hilarious. Sophia, seated at the kitchen island wrapped in a shawl, laughed until she coughed. Her voice was raspy, but the laughter was real. The sound filled the space like sunlight after a storm, awkward, imperfect, but necessary. Christian tried again. Toast. This time he only slightly overdid it. "Don't quit your day job," Sophia teased softly. He looked at her from across the kitchen, an eyebrow raised. "You're assuming I'm still going back." She studied him carefully. "Are you?" He didn't answer immediately. The question hung in the air between them like an unopened letter. Truth was, he wasn't sure. His world had tilted so fast that the skyscrapers and board meetings felt like distant echoes now. All that remained was the feeling in his chest. This odd, expanding ache that only showed up when he was near them. Doctors arrived that afternoon, quiet, respectful, professional. They brought equipment and whispered updates, examined Sophia with the kind of care Christian insisted on. No paperwork for her, no clipped explanations or long waits, everything approved, everything covered. The diagnosis hadn't changed, the tumor was still there, still threatening, but now the weight wasn't all on her shoulders. Now there was a man in the hallway who paced nervously during the blood draw, who listened closely when treatment options were reviewed. A man who used to be unreachable, now calling specialists personally and rearranging schedules without flinching. Grace, his assistant, finally called him. "Sir, is the world ending?" she asked flatly. "No," Christian said, watching Lily in the backyard through the kitchen window. She was building something out of sticks and fallen leaves. "It's just beginning." Grace paused. "You sound different." "I am," he said. Evenings became their own kind of ritual. Christian read bedtime stories to Lily, fumbling voices for talking animals and wizard spells. She'd giggle when he mixed up the pages and always asked for one more. Sophia sat nearby, sometimes correcting him, sometimes just watching, a small smile tucked beneath tired eyes. They weren't a picture-perfect family. There were messes and awkward silences, mismatched schedules, and moments when Christian still reached for the safety of control. But something deeper had started to root itself. A rhythm, a trust. Sophia began taking slow walks around the house, wrapped in a cardigan, her cheeks pinking with color again. She started a journal. Christian caught her writing once, and she looked up, smiling faintly. "I'm not just surviving anymore," she said. "I'm remembering who I am." He didn't reply. He didn't need to. He just stood there, watching the woman he had once loved and never stopped missing. And the child who'd asked to buy a dad, now fast asleep with her head on a pillow. Christian had fluffed himself, and in that quiet, soft evening, he realized something startling. This was the hardest thing he'd ever done, and he wouldn't trade it for the world. The moment came quietly. One afternoon, as Christian sat on the floor beside Lily's art supplies, helping her glue popsicle sticks into what she insisted was a castle spaceship, she handed him a drawing. A bright, messy crayon scrawl of 3 stick figures beneath a crooked sun. She pointed at each one. "That's Mommy. That's me." Then, tapping the tallest figure with the biggest smile, she said, "That's you, Dad." Christian froze. She said it so casually, so confidently, like it had always been true. And for her, maybe it had. He looked at her, this small, fearless girl, who had walked into his lobby and asked to buy something she should have never had to go without, and felt his throat close. He nodded once, smiled softly, and folded the drawing with the reverence of a man holding a priceless treasure. He didn't correct her. He didn't question it. He simply became it. That evening, he tucked her in with extra care. She asked if he'd still be there in the morning. "Always," he replied without hesitation. It wasn't just a promise, it was a vow. Sophia was watching from the hallway. She said nothing, but when he stepped out and gently closed the door behind him, she took his hand. Not out of romance, but out of something quieter and stronger, trust. In the weeks that followed, the house grew into itself. It stopped feeling like a borrowed space, and began to hum with the signs of life. Art projects cluttered the kitchen island. A tiny pink sock showed up in his briefcase one Monday morning, and he smiled when he found it. There were handprints on the windows, crumbs in the cushions, soft lullabies from down the hall. Sophia's health was improving. Slowly, steadily, the doctors were optimistic. Her strength was returning, her voice too. Christian turned one of the guest rooms into a writing nook just for her. Shelves of poetry, an old armchair, a view of the east garden, where the sunlight always hit gently in the morning. She spent hours there, reclaiming the words she thought she'd lost. When he found a first edition of her favorite book, and left it on the seat wrapped in linen and a ribbon, she cried, not because of the book, but because someone had remembered. Christian still worked, but differently, more present. He left his phone in another room sometimes. He missed a quarterly update once, and didn't panic. His board was confused but surprisingly supportive. Grace had stopped asking if he was okay, and started texting him reminders, like, "Don't forget Lily's field trip," or "Sophia's next blood panel is Thursday." At night, Christian and Sophia often sat on the back porch together, sometimes in silence, sometimes talking about everything they'd missed. The years, the anger, the love. One night she looked at him, her voice calm. "She started calling you Dad." "I know," he said. "It scared me at first, but now it scares me more. How right it feels." Sophia nodded. She's safe now, and for the first time in his life, so was he. Spring arrived softly, as if not to disturb the fragile miracle that had taken root inside Christian Blake's once sterile life. The trees surrounding the house blushed with pink blossoms, and the garden outside Lily's bedroom window hummed with bees and new beginnings. Lily had grown taller. She drew more now, not just crayon people, but little families under bright suns, with names and details and smiles that seemed to say, "I belong." In one drawing, she added a fourth figure, a baby. When Christian asked why, she simply said, in case. He'd almost dropped his coffee. Sophia had only laughed. Their days unfolded in a rhythm that no longer felt borrowed. It was their life now. Christian took fewer meetings. He delegated freely. He left work early for school pickups and stayed up late helping Sophia proof her manuscript. Her writing had gained attention. Honest, raw essays about motherhood, survival, and rediscovered love. A small publisher reached out. When she signed the contract, Christian's hands trembled, not out of worry, but pride. "You did this," he told her. Sophia shook her head. "No, we did." One Sunday, under a sky painted with soft clouds, they took a walk through a nearby park. One Christian had passed for years and never once entered. Lily fed ducks. Christian lay in the grass beside Sophia while she rested her head on his chest, the air sweet with blooming flowers and the smell of cinnamon from a nearby food cart. "Did you ever imagine this?" Sophia asked. "No," Christian whispered, running a hand through her hair, "but I think I spent years building a life that looked good from the outside." In this he paused, watching Lily chase a butterfly barefoot. "This is what it means to be home." That evening, just as the sun dipped behind the trees, Sophia lingered at the front door. She looked at him carefully, like she was weighing something delicate. "Do you still want what we talked about?" she asked. Christian didn't speak. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. Inside was a ring. Nothing extravagant, simple, elegant, exactly like her. She didn't cry at first. She just stepped into him, hands on his face, and kissed him with all the gratitude of a second chance that had finally arrived. Lily clapped from the steps. "Did you just get married?" "Almost," Sophia laughed, wiping her eyes. "We're working on it." Months later, the wedding was held under strings of soft lights in their backyard. Lily wore a crown of flowers and threw petals like confetti. Sophia walked barefoot across the grass in a dress that made her look not fragile, but strong, luminous. Christian, in a gray linen suit, stood waiting with the calm of a man who had stopped running. They didn't exchange perfect vows. They spoke from the place where the wounds had healed. Not promises of forever, but promises of showing up. Every day, every choice. Not to fix what had been broken, but to build something better from it. As they danced under the stars, just the three of them, arms tangled, laughter spilling into the night, Christian finally understood. Happiness wasn't a prize at the end of a race. It was here, in spilled juice, in bedtime stories, in shared burdens, in long-forgotten poems. In a little girl who had once asked to buy a dad, and in doing so, bought them all a second chance at life.